But we have an MLA from inside that. This is Machine Getson. He's from LAC STE. He joined us. Great to see you.
Well, LAC STE and Parklands.
Oh, you know what? I apologize. I got
worries.
that wrong.
No.
You know what? We were just talking before the camera came on. Some of the best places on away.
Callahoo.
Callahoo, yeah.
Whiteport?
Wadman, well, no, just shy of Whiteport. So we're at Greenport.
You know, I used to work with Flip Brightbush. He was the MP and sort of Yellowhead, as it was called. So I guess there's some overlap there.
Yeah, there is. It's a new redraw in the last electoral period, obviously. But I keep bragging it up. Makes it easy for everybody. Just call it God's country. And it's so good that I actually had the Pope come up and bless our lake this year. So.
Well, there you go. Right. And forgive me for not knowing my geography enough, but that is good country there. Bit of agriculture, a bit of oil and gas up there too.
Yeah, we have oil, gas, we have agriculture, we have mining assets going, forestry. We're also right on the edge of the city, so Atchison Industrial Park, like literally the Edmonton city limits are on my border. So we've got a really good demographic, good mix, and I would propose probably a good cut of what Albertans are all about. Not too far away from Grace Life Church. That's true. Just across the border, Grace Life is from my constituency. So that's Drayton Valley, Devon. It's just literally right on the border. All right. Well, thanks for giving me a briefing and forgive me for getting that wrong. Problem. You know, Sheila Gunn Reid is from Northern Alberta, and so she knows the neck of the woods. Sheila, why don't you lead things off with talk about the lockdown? Because in my view, there were two really tough issues in the last few years. One was dealing with Ottawa. The other was lockdowns and pandemic. And I know you've got strong views on both of them.
Sure, I do. You were actually one of the few that were quite outspoken against the lockdowns, but you dodged the bullet that Drew Barnes caught. How did you do that? Why were you allowed to stay in caucus? Well, I don't know if I've ever been called a bullet dodger before. Just haven't shied away.
It's a compliment.
Yeah,
no. So there's caucus competence. I mean, obviously you folks understand that. Yeah. I think it would be an oversimplification to say it was simply from being vocal that anyone dodged any bullets.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough.
You know, there's the point. So I proposed to a few folks that asked me the same thing, and why have someone who's as vocal as me that was against the restricted access program, who drove my own gravel truck in the convoy, who had a vaccine injury, who had been vocal against all of that, had commented on, quite frankly, the management of AHS. Why was I allowed to stay? Maybe it wasn't about what we were saying. Maybe it was about other actions behind it. And I guess I would put that back to you as good journalists to maybe go further than what the canned answer might have been.
Isn't that an interesting point? Well, I appreciate you saying that. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the trucker conflict, because in my view, the regime media, Justin Trudeau, Marco Mendocino, the public safety minister, they've all tried to recast that as a kind of Canada's version of the insurrection on January 6th. You know, sedition, violence, white supremacists. It was a riot. I think they're trying to graft that Trump narrative onto the truckers. I think it failed because people saw the bouncy castles and the hot tubs, and there was no violence. And I think that the regime failed to demonize it, but not for lack of trying. What was it like being a part of it, to actually taking your own gravel truck and joining it?
Well, I didn't go nationally. Like, I didn't go down to Ottawa, honestly, because when that was happening, I was in an emergency room having a reaction to the vaccination. So it was about a week and a half later is when it took place locally. And that's in my constituency, Atchison is where it was at. I literally had my 18-year-old.
I think I was there.
Yeah, perfect. Not sure. So I was in the yellow and the very, very nice yellow and black Kenworth, I might add, with its working clothes on it. So, yeah, my son, he was there with me. He had an EpiPen in one hand, and that's what we were looking at. So literally at that time, obviously you go there and you suss out these things, you take a look, and it was just great, folks. It was one of the most patriotic things that I've seen in a long time. It was like the dam had finally burst. You had folks from all sides of all different conversations and walks of life that remembered one thing that bound us all together, what Alberta was to be strong and free, and what our Canada used to be, the true north, strong and free, and phenomenal. So again, when you've got I would propose somewhat of a hostile federal government that is doing those things, they're trying to paint the picture, but thank goodness for the grassroots Canadians that all came out, supported that, told their story, and managed to break the narrative of the mainstream media.
Yeah, it was a close run thing. I mean, the regime media, as I call it, they didn't even go and meet the truckers. They had pre-written their stories from their offices. They didn't dare to encounter the facts because that might change their theory. Very interesting. I want to ask you a personal question. I asked this to Todd Lowen. I used to know Jason Kenney pretty well. I'd say we were friends. We sort of were the same vintage. I lived in Edmonton when he was running the Taxpayers Federation. We sort of hung out. Went to Ottawa same time he did. I went as a staffer. He went as an MP. We call ourselves the snack pack because we like to eat so much. When he retired from Ottawa, I thought, here's the leading conservative politician of our day. Most principled, most effective, big work ethic, knows French, strong ethic, community outreach. This guy is the star. You know, I think a lot of people thought he should have run for federal leader, but he came in Alberta, fused the two parties. How did the most freedom-oriented, conservative-oriented, freedom of religion-oriented, anti-Ottawa bullying guy lose his way? How did that happen? Or maybe you don't think he lost his way. I think he lost his way.
Yeah, well, it's all a matter of perspective. Like, honestly, the first time I met Jason Kenney is when we were at the nomination event when all of us candidates were meeting each other. So I'm a brand new politician. My background was running major projects. I've worked in oil and gas, linear construction predominantly. Worked for companies like Enbridge, TransCanada, had my own consulting company. A ton of us stepped forward at the time because simply the socialists had taken over our province, and we saw the almost a trifecta effect depending on the municipal levels and what was taking place in Ottawa as well. So a bunch of us stepped out of our skin to do that. I wouldn't have honestly known Jason over difference than Brian Jean for knowing him. So when we had a leader of the party, the best thing that ever happened was joining those two parties together. That was what we needed to do. But as far as losing his way, what was his way? You know, again, some folks have asked me, has his management style been different than others? Has it changed during the way? You throw in the recession, the COVID response, some of the things behind the rooms that I can't tell you about. There was a different management style in dealing with different crises and dealing with different stakeholders, et cetera, at the time. But the other thing that I'll put forward, and I'm not trying to skirt you on this, but when you look at the way that, in this, I've said this on different broadcasts before, when you expect the NHL to produce you a basketball player, then maybe your expectations are a little bit skewed. When you expect Ottawa to produce a provincial style leader that Albertans come to grow and expect, you're making different connotations. So right now, I think what you see is a healthy thing that took place. You've got the grassroots are coming back together. You've had a chance to have a management style pull together this party. It's like a merger and an acquisition in a typical commercial aspect. And all of a sudden, from within of that corporation, the new corporation, you're going to get a new leader. So the biggest thing that we're going to show is your democratic muscle is still alive and well. You've got good candidates to pick from, and this is going to be the healthiest thing ever. So hats off to Jason Kenney for navigating a ton of that, getting us to this point, and quite frankly, doing the right thing by stepping down and not prolonging this. It's allowing that corporation, our party, to grow and get to the next iteration, next level.
I'm going to ask one more question of you, because he did step down. He hasn't kept his hands off them. He's been giving puck shots from the sideline, which is unusual for a leader who's sort of in a caretaker mode. But put that aside, Danielle Smith, who's generally regarded as a front runner, has attracted sort of a pile-on. In fact, there was a joint press conference by the other candidates criticizing her. Some of that, I think, will be water under the bridge as soon as the result is known tonight. But if Danielle Smith wins, I think some of the candidates who ran against her were so vigorous. They said things that even if they take them back personally, well, they're still out there. Those words are still out there. The videotape's still out there. I think some of the other candidates said things that can't be sort of unsaid, and I don't know how they can fuse together. I wonder how worried you are that there will be a civil war, is too big a word, a split, that there will be a split and a dissatisfaction that Rachel Notley will profit. Will the next leader be able to fuse this party into a team, or have too many words being spoken?
Oh, yeah. I think you're over exaggerating it, honestly. Yeah, so personal opinion, and I'm going to use an example that I learned very early in my career. We're up on a project in the middle of the Northwest Territories. We're stuck out in the bush. We're, got 24/7 building a diamond mine 350 kilometers northeast of Yellowknife. This old salty superintendent, I'm a brand new field engineer on site. This old salty superintendent sees me talking to one of the owners' reps about concrete or something like that. So old Roy McKay is up on site. The safety guy comes up and the quality control guy comes up and says, Roy's bad talking. Up on the site, he's saying all these things of, what you said, and you shouldn't be talking to this owner's rep and everything else. And as a brand new young field engineer, 20 odd some years and change up there, there's this demigod, quite frankly, in the industry of that stature that a superintendent brings to that type of project, major capital project out there in the middle of nowhere. So I wrestled with that for the whole morning of what to do. And finally, I heard Roy saying something by the coffee machine. He kind of said, "Hey, Getson, good Lord hates a coward, doesn't he?" I said, "You're absolutely right. I want to talk to you in your office." Took him into the office, his office. So now imagine this young pup who's new to the job site, bringing in this guy that's a salty old dog, closing the door behind him, and going through what I heard, what the issues were, and everything else. Roy respected that. And I said, I'm basically saying to him, like, you can torpedo my whole career of just starting off on this. Why are you doing this? And he says, I'm glad you cleared that up. He says, I trust you now. And he says, no, by the way, he says, Shane, I'll tell you something. Hopefully you can take it the rest of your career. He says, I respect, and so does this industry, high-performing people. He says, if you want to win a race, you get thoroughbreds. And every time you put thoroughbreds in the barn, every once in a while you get some stall doors kicked. But that's the team you're going to use to go win the race. I propose it's the same thing here. I believe that the members actually kept their sticks on the ice pretty decent through this. They had a little bit of scuttle in the corner, or whatever you want to call it, with different things. I think everybody understands that there's a war to win here, not a little internal family battle to solve. We're going to be back at Christmas dinner talking to each other right after Thanksgiving. And the biggest thing is going to be that meeting when we get together and we come off the ice. And literally, by the time that we're all talking about Easter, you're going to see a solid, really solid, good team here that's all going to hold together. And if there are outliers, then we'll take care of family business internally.
Shane, you're a good political talker.
Yes.
Sheila, last question to you.
My last question to you is that we're not all that far out from general election. So the new leader, whoever that is, what's the first thing they need to do to prove to Albertans that they need to be the person to continue to lead this province, as opposed to trying their hand with Rachel Notley again?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's not just the leader. Again, I think we've seen that from the key man principle that potentially that leadership style doesn't work for this. I think what you have to do is leverage those horses that you have in the stalls. Which ones may be in harness at whichever given time. Maybe you need to fresh out some of your horses on different portfolios. But what you need to do is to bring together that team. The biggest thing that Albertans will see is if the leader, we'll get the results tonight, obviously, but that leader, I think, with the top runners, they all have the same philosophy. You bring a team together, you gel as a team, you restructure, you make sure you're good. And when you come out of that room, when you come out of those caucus meetings or a retreat or however we set this up, then you're going to see that team that people can get behind. And the other one is trust. Trust is the biggest thing. Don't say something you're not going to do. Don't do something you're not going to say. Follow through with what you say. And we'll gain that trust back, and you'll see a settled down team pulling the same direction. And that's the biggest thing we can do for Albertans.
Well, you seem ready to have the team spirit and just go giver, and I wish you good luck. And do you have a prediction for who's going to win and what the percent will be? I don't want to put you on the spot, but, I am thinking about a few weeks back when Pierre Poilievre got 68% out of the gates, and that really helped on the unity side. Do you think this will go to a second ballot?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, honestly, people have asked me this too. And so Danielle, we've spent some time together in different stages as well. We got to know her. Travis, I've endorsed him right out of the gate because I've worked with him the last 3 years and seen how he's operated behind closed doors, not just out in public. Rebecca's solid as well. Brian's got a pedigree on him. Todd's kind of the underdog, so to speak, and a lot of folks are rooting for him. Layla brings her own to it, and so does Raj. But I think with the top three numbers, you're probably going to be 2 ladies and a guy. It's probably going to be top numbers. And then as far as picking it, I don't know. The preferential ballot system is always a wild card. If you get the second or third or the fourth numbers, you never know. And I think the best way I put this to folks when they ask me, and hopefully I'm not dodging the bullet, but this is honestly how I feel. It's like when I went into the delivery room with my wife and we were having our first child, there's not much I can say or do at that point. I'm along for the ride. So I'm here along for the ride tonight.
Right on. Well, listen, great to have you here. Thanks for stopping by Rebel News. We're one of a number of independent media who are here in Florence tonight. I see our friends from Western Standard Online are here, of course. True North is here, and so I'm proud that there is an independent media, and I'm glad that you're coming by to give us your point of view.
Well, absolutely, and appreciate what you folks do as well. So it's no different than I'm going to put a plug out for the little local papers, as MLAs and everybody else. Definitely support those little local papers. Make sure you can get your message and your narrative out there, and don't be afraid to talk to folks from non-mainstream media types. Quite frankly, when I talk to the ones that rhyme with CBC, I always want to have something written and possibly a lawyer in the room. It's wild. So thanks for allowing us some of that latitude to be able to be open and honest. I appreciate it.
Thanks for stopping by. Well, there you have Shane Getson, an MLA